White people in the Americas, before, during, and after the Bering Strait migrations. I wrote the book entitled Adam's Descendants, finished it in 1996 when I was 43. I am 72 in 2025. The book makes the assertion that Adam was not the first man on earth 6,000 years ago. The Bible teaches us this. It is just that preachers refuse to see the evidence that there were other people on earth at the time of Adam. They were taught Adam was the first man on earth, as their teachers were taught. The Bible evidence that Adam was not the first man is in plain sight. It is not rocket science. Preachers are a right-brained people. They solve problems, read the Bible with imagery, feelings, emotions. They simply refuse to use their left brain, which solves problems with logic and sequential thinking. Modern Christian theology is Marxist. We all came from Adam 6,000 years ago. We are all equal in God's eyes. Jesus came for everyone. He loves everyone the same. Except Jews are God's chosen. They are more equal. Jesus was a Jew. Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, David, Solomon, and all the prophets of the Bible were Jews, which is a lie. Jews are God's chosen. They speak, we listen. The insanity of it all has, for 40 years, always confused me greatly. The following is taken from this Adam book, and it is chapter 11, The Ancient Americas. There is overwhelming and undeniable evidence that tens of thousands, perhaps hundreds of thousands, of white people entered and settled in the Americas starting 12,000 years before Christ, before, during, and after the Bering Strait migration. Of the evidence available, a very small amount, the tip of a huge iceberg, is presented here. Written evidence. From Minor Works on Marvelous Things Heard, Section 84, by Aristotle, 300 BC. In the sea outside the Pillars of Hercules, they say that an island was found by the Carthaginians, a wilderness having wood of all kinds and navigable rivers, remarkable for various kinds of fruits, and many days' sailing distance away. When the Carthaginians, who were masters of the Western Ocean, observed that many traders and other men, attracted by the fertility of the soil and the pleasant climate, frequented it because of its richness, and some resided there, they feared that knowledge of this land would reach other nations, and that a great concourse to it of men from various lands of the earth would follow. Therefore, lest the Carthaginian Empire itself should suffer injury, and the dominion of the sea be wrested from their hands, the Senate of Carthage issued a decree that no one, under penalty of death, should thereafter sail thither, and they massacred all who resided there. Who were the Carthaginians? They were the same people as the Phoenicians, the Semitic, Shemites, sons of Noah, red-headed, blue-eyed people described in an earlier chapter. They were cousins to Abraham, 2000 BC, the Israelites, and their faces looked like the Pun and the ruling Egyptians. It was the Phoenicians, 2000 BC, that started the story that the earth is flat, you go so far, and your ship, and you in it, fall off the earth to death. This lie worked for thousands of years. From Diodorus, 100 BC of Sicily, taken from the Historical Library, Book Feed, Chapter 2, there lies a very great island in the vast ocean, many days' sail from Libya westward. The soil there is very fruitful, a great part whereof is mountainous, but much likewise a plain, which is the most sweet and pleasant part, for it is watered with several navigable rivers. The mountainous part of the country is clothed with very large woods, and all manner of fruit trees and springs of fresh water. There you may have game enough in hunting all sorts of wild beasts. This island seems rather to be the residence of some of the gods than of men. Anciently, by reason of its remote location, it was altogether unknown, but afterwards discovered upon this occasion. The Phoenicians in ancient times undertook frequent voyages by sea, in way of traffic as merchants, so that they planted many colonies both in Africa and in these western parts of Europe. These merchants, succeeding in their undertaking and thereupon growing very rich, passed at length beyond the Pillars of Hercules, southern tip of Spain, into the sea called the ocean. This quotation from Plato, about 400 BC, was taken from Atlantis, The Antediluvian World by Donnelly, page 9, 1882. Also, Henriette Mertz's book Atlantis, 1976, discusses this quotation in detail. She makes a case for Atlantis being the southeastern United States. She locates a modern descendant of the 734 AD Portuguese settlers, about 5,000, to America. It is an interesting work. In those days, long before Plato, the Atlantic was navigable from an island situated to the west of the straits which you call the Pillars of Hercules. The island was larger than Libya and Asia, perhaps meaning Middle East, put together, and from it could be reached other islands, and from the islands you might pass through to the opposite continent, meaning America. Plato later states that the island was sunk by an earthquake. According to Plato, the island was destroyed by Zeus, the god of gods, because when this divine portion began to fade away in them and became diluted too often, and with too much of the mortal admixture, and the human nature got the upper hand, then they, being unable to bear their fortune, became unseemly. And to him who had an eye to see, they began to appear base, and had lost the fairest of their precious gifts. Read Genesis 6:2 again. The sons of God married the daughters of men. When Columbus and Cortez entered the Americas, it was 100% Stone Age. Diaz, a soldier under Cortez, left a diary which you can find free online. Modern history books still teach that the great monuments were made by native Mexicans and show pictures in their books. They used a sharp rock in one hand, a hammer rock in the other, while living a day-to-day survival. They show pictures in their books of hundreds of natives pulling a 50-ton rock on a skid, with plant-based ropes, using llamas to pick up and move around those perfection-cut rocks, so perfect that credit cards or a sheet of papers cannot fit between the seams, all done with a sharp rock in one hand and a hammer rock in the other. From the writings of Columbus, he landed in the Caribbean, November 6, 1492. My messengers report that after a march of 12 miles, they found a village with perhaps about 1,000 inhabitants. The natives, they say, received them with great ceremony, lodged them in their grass houses, carried them around on their arms, kissed their hands and feet, and in short, tried to make clear to them in every possible way that it was known the white men came from the gods. About 50 men and women asked my messengers to be allowed to travel back with them to the heaven of the eternal gods. Columbus, like many of the early explorers, was fair and had blue eyes. Columbus was 6 feet 2 inches. A side note, every sailor with Columbus returned to Spain with an incurable case of gonorrhea. Pedro Pizarro was a Spanish explorer. He conquered, looted, and plundered the Incas in the early 1520s. He writes, in his diary, "The ruling class of 300 in the kingdom of Peru was fair-skinned with fair hair about the color of ripe wheat. Wheat color is blonde. Most of the great lords and ladies looked like white Spaniards. In that country I met an Indian woman with her child, both so fair-skinned that they were hardly distinguishable from fair white men. Their fellow countrymen called them children of the gods." He further states that the ruling class was one large family, which supplied all the country's governors, generals, and dignitaries. These aristocrats shunned all intermarriage with the Indians. They spoke a language of their own. The 300 were adorned in gold ornaments. Pizarro tortured some of them, found the gold stores, loaded 6 ships full of gold, then killed the 300. Today, gold sells for about $3,500 an ounce. In the writings of Cortez, he conquered and plundered the Aztec nation. It is revealed that the Indians had legends of a great flood, a Tower of Babel, it wasn't called Babel though, and an immaculate conception of the white god. The Indian priests also forgave sins and went through a type of baptism. Father Carvajal, a priest who was with the explorer Orellana in South America in 1545 to 1546, details his experiences along the Amazon. His first contact with white Indians was when 4 white strangers walked into the shocked Spanish explorers' camp. These men were quite white, had fine hair reaching to their waist, and were a span, 9 inches, taller than the average Spanish soldier, who were considerably taller than the South American Indian. These white-skinned giants were well-mannered, decked out in gold and loaded with a great quantity of food. The Spanish often lacked food. After much civility, the four men departed, leaving behind a quantity of food, but no information. This was taken from Account of the Discovery of the Orellana River, page 214, by Friar Gaspar de Carvajal. The English translation is The Discovery of the Amazon, according to the account of Friar Gaspar de Carvajal and other documents by Edward Goodman, 1934. See pages 186, 214, and 219 to 222. Their next contact with white people was with a dozen Amazon women, referred to as Amazons. These women are very white and tall, and have hair very long and braided and wound about the head, and they are very robust and go about naked, but with their privy parts covered, and their bow and arrows in their hands, doing as much fighting as 10 Indian men. And indeed, there was one woman among those who shot an arrow a span deep into one of the brigantines, and others less deep, so that our brigantines looked like porcupines. Carvajal went on to say in his diary that these women clubbed any Indian man who tried to turn and run from the Spanish enemy. However, 7 or 8 of these white women were killed, and the Indians lost heart and fled. From a writing by Colonel Fawcett, 1906 to 1907, he and other people saw white Indians on the Amazon. One story told to him, "My brother went up in a launch, and one day, well upriver, was told that white Indians were near. He didn't believe it and scoffed at the men who told him, but nevertheless went out in a canoe and found unmistakable signs of Indians. The next thing he knew, he and his men were being attacked by big, well-built, handsome savages, pure white with red hair and blue eyes. They fought like devils too." Fawcett was the premier modern explorer of the Amazon territory. In the early 1500s, Verrazano found fair-skinned and civilized Indians near Long Island Sound. Also, Powhatan, Pocahontas's father, had gray eyes. In the diaries of the Lewis and Clark expedition personnel, there exists evidence that the Flathead Indians were whiter than the other tribes, as Mr. Gass states, September 1805. "They were the whitest Indians I ever saw." Also, within The Adventures of Captain Bonneville, circa 1830, by Irving, there are interesting observations concerning both the Flathead and Nez Perce Indians. They obviously were a unique people. Unlike the other Northwest tribes encountered, both the Flathead and Nez Perce, who were neighbors, were very spiritual, kept the Sabbath, and had Christian characteristics, faith and works. The percentage of Caucasian genes in these people comes to mind. We will never know. Read chapters 9 and 45. Nelson Lee, a former Texas Ranger and horse rancher, was captured by the Comanche Nation in 1856. He survived and became their slave for 3 years, after which he escaped. Within his book, 3 Years Among the Comanches, written in 1859, he describes part of a town he saw in the southern Rockies and the legend associated with these ancient ruins. From the words of the Comanche chief, Lee's slave master, "Innumerable moons ago, a race of white men, 10 feet high, and far more rich and powerful than any white people now living, here inhabited a large range of country, extending from the rising sun to the setting sun. They excelled every other nation which has flourished either before or since in all manner of cunning handicraft, were brave and warlike, ruling over the land they had wrested from its ancient possessors with a high and haughty hand. In the height of their power and glory, when they remembered justice and mercy no more, and became proud and lifted up, the Great Spirit descended from above, sweeping them with fire and deluge from the face of the earth." Note, to the reader, the immediate territory of the ruins of this ancient town were surrounded by volcanic rock. This was taken from the book 3 Years Among the Comanches, originally published 1859, by Nelson Lee. See pages 154 to 156. Legends in Mexico and Peru. The Toltec and Aztec god, Quetzalcoatl, and the Peruvian god Viracocha were white man gods who taught the native inhabitants a more advanced civilization. There are a number of stories about these men, but the consensus is that they were white bearded men who disappeared across the sea, promising to return one day. The natives were beardless. When Cortés landed in Mexico, the Aztecs thought the Spaniards were the men of Quetzalcoatl returning, even though it had been 500 years since the white god had left Mexico. Even today, the Mexicans do not make the connection. They still worship Quetzalcoatl as one of their gods. Legend states that Quetzalcoatl had blue eyes. Also, note the comments in the Columbus journey mentioned above. Those people in the Caribbean thought the same thing. The great white god returning as he had promised. Physical evidence in the Americas. Rock and cave inscriptions and carvings. The swastika, a 12,000-year symbol of the Aryan people, is found carved all over the Americas. Latin inscriptions, 400 to 500 AD, are found carved on rocks all over North America. Lugh, the Celtic god of light, is found on rock drawing in Wyoming. Tablets are found in a cave in Mystery Hill, New Hampshire, that are dated at 800 to 600 BC. The writing is Phoenician. One translates, "The Baal of the Canaanites," means Phoenicians, this in dedication. Engraved on a rock at Mount Hope, Rhode Island, is written, "Mariners of Tarshish this rock proclaims." A likely estimate of its writing is 700 to 600 BC. If these seafarers were not Phoenician, they must have been closely related. Tarshish is mentioned 25 times in the Bible. The Phoenicians were cousins to the Israelites of the Bible and were known for their red hair and blue eyes. The beginning of the Israelites was 1900 BC, and essentially that nation ended 745 BC. Modern preachers do not have a clue of this fact. Jesus said in Matthew 15:24, "I came only for the lost sheep of the house of Israel." Found in a Paraguayan cave is the engraving "Inscription cut by mariners from Cadiz, exploring." The time frame is also 700 to 600 BC. In Paraíba province, Brazil, is found a stone with Phoenician engraving carved into it. The stone monument was cut by Phoenicians of Sidon. They set out on a voyage in the 19th year of the reign of Hiram their king, 536 BC. They departed from Ashangabar in the Red Sea in 10 ships, and they sailed in company along the coast of Africa for 2 years. They became separated from the flagship and were carried far away from their companions. 10 men and 3 women arrived in Brazil. Artifacts and coins. A Roman oil lamp that was built shortly after the time of Christ was found in Connecticut. Alabaster egg with official King Tut seal was found in Idaho about 1900. King Tut was 1340 BC. Phoenician urn, 600 BC, was found in New York State excavation. Coins from many ancient civilizations are found all over America. Roman, Iberian, and Celtic are just a few of the varieties. In Massachusetts, a large jar of Islamic coins, probably brought over by the Norse, was discovered during a road excavation in 1787. Farmers are the biggest source of these coin finds, however. As they plow the virgin soil, coins are turned up by the plow. A statue of Saint Bartholomew, whom the Indians called their white god, was found in the Incan Empire by the early Spaniards. A Phoenician sculpture of a woman's face on a winged horse was found by an Ecuador farmer as he plowed his field. The design is the period 800 to 600 BC, and her features are European. I could not find the original of this, but I enclose a picture that looked like the one I saw back when. Language, vocabulary, and writing. Elephant drawings are found in Colorado. On the rock, they are referred to as Phil. The ancient Greeks and later the Icelanders used this word for elephant. Other African animal sculptures, like elephants, are also found in burial mounds near Davenport, Iowa. Depending on the Indian tribe, there are substantial similarities to Greek, Latin, Berber, Phoenician, or Celtic vocabulary. Thomas Jefferson's interest in languages led him to notice the similarities between the ancient North African, in ancient times they were Adamic, tongues, and North American Indian. His retirement plans of research were thwarted by the theft and destruction of his lifetime collections of records on the subject. Jefferson was not familiar with the Central and South American Indian similarities in language, but they are also substantial. Bet you those records are still alive in the home of one of God's chosen, passed down the past 200 years since their theft, laughing about it all when they show their close friends the stolen work of President Thomas Jefferson. There are Indian place names in the Americas that correspond with ancient European and North African place names. The picture writings utilized by some Indian tribes match ancient Egyptian writings. There are also pre-Christian drawings of horses, drawn by the ancient Nevada residents. Note, horses were not known to the Americas prior to Adamic man rediscovery of the continents, the time of Cortez. The Incas utilized the decimal system and used beam scales like the Romans. The Greeks invented the decimal system. Many pyramids are found in the southern Americas. The step pyramids are like those found at Saqqara, Egypt. The underground design chambers are often like those in Egypt, and both align with the stars. There are some off the coast of Mexico. The last ice age ended about 10,000 years ago, and the melting of all the ice raised the ocean levels 400 feet since then. Dredgers often find evidence of former cities underwater, off the coast of eastern North America. The Mayans utilized the stele, a large stone, a carved column, to record important events. The Greeks invented recording events in such a manner. The Incas utilized the obelisk, something similar, but the origin is from Egypt. Indian records in Mexico go back to about 320 AD. They chronicle the life of central Mexico and discuss the white god rulers. Other interesting finds: the adobe houses of the Pueblo Indians in New Mexico match exactly the design of the houses found in Libya, Berber construction. The Libyans started mining operations in Nevada. From ancient historical records, the ancient Berbers were a lighter-skinned people, a white people, compared to today. Grant, in his book, The Passing of the Great Race, describes the ancient ones as blonde. Kapp states that today the Berbers are dark-haired and have brown or hazel eyes. The original Bergers were Nordic, tall, blonde, blue. European skulls are found in New England, carbon-dated 400 AD. Huge rock phalluses are found throughout Europe and scattered throughout America, all standing on end. Earth-covered rock chambers are also found in both America and Europe. The construction is identical. Druid Celtic priest chairs are found throughout Europe. An identical one is found near Boston, Massachusetts. Dolmens, huge boulders balanced on smaller rock pedestals, were ancient religious sites built by Northern European priests, Druids. Thousands are found in Northern Europe, dozens in Northeast America. A copper mine is found near Lake Superior. Carbon dating indicates operation between 2000 to 1000 BC. The copper grade is very high, and testing of copper ornaments made in the Middle East 3,000 years ago reveals this copper came from the American site. Burial mounds of same design are found often, both in Europe and America. Incas utilized mummification, much like the Egyptians. Modern science has proven that the Indian cotton is a cross between the European, 26 large chromosomes, and American, growing wild, it has 26 small chromosomes, cotton. The Incan kings wore robes of Tyrian purple, the same color as the ancient Phoenicians. Ruins of ancient aqueducts, which carried water from the hills, are found in the ruins of Tiahuanaco, Peru. They were designed similarly to the ones in the ancient Mediterranean and Middle East. Burial mounds across the southeast United States, they have been found skeletons from 8 to 10 feet tall. From his report on the mound explorations of the Bureau of Ethnology for the Smithsonian's 12th Annual Report, published in 1894, Cyrus Thomas relates the following discoveries. In these caves, both in Kentucky and Tennessee, the bodies appear to have been laid on the floor of the cave, sometimes in beds of ashes, sometimes on a pavement of flat stones. There are, however, some instances in which the bodies have been found encased in stone slabs. and afterwards embedded in clay or ashes. In Smith and Warren counties, Tennessee, and in Warren and Fayette counties, Kentucky, the flesh of the bodies was preserved, and the hair was yellow and of fine texture. In some cases, the bodies were enveloped in several thicknesses of coarse cloth, with an outer wrapping of deerskin. Some of the bodies were wrapped in a kind of cloth made of bark fiber, into which feathers were woven in such a manner as to form a smooth surface. In 2 cases, the bodies, placed in a sitting or squatting posture, were encased in baskets. In one of the caves in Smith County, the body of a female is said to have been found, having about the waist a silver girdle with marks resembling letters. And his presentation continues. What happened to the white settlements? From looking at the physical characteristics of some Indian tribes, it is apparent that Adamic man came to the Americas en masse and intermarried with the Indians, particularly the Nez Perce and Flathead tribes of the Northwest and the Cherokee tribe, perhaps too the Choctaw and Chickasaw of the Southeast U.S., possessed some of Adamic man's genes. Northern Mexico tribes look different from the Central Mexico tribes. The later tend to be short, fat, a primitive monkey look in the face, where the northern tribes are often slender, with a mixture of Indian and European in the facial features. You can see the differences in Mexican faces when you are out shopping in 2025. There is other evidence to indicate that the Indians exterminated the great bulk of the early white settlers. They were very much outnumbered, and sharpened rock spears and arrows kill as well as iron. Buried artifacts were found near Tucson, Arizona. The following is detailed in the book, Callalus, by Cyclone Covey, published in 1975. This is an exceptional book detailing the pre-Columbus settlement of the southwestern United States by white people, 190 pages. The artifacts included lead swords, spears, a patriarchal monstrance shrine, and 8 heavy crosses. The crosses were actually 2 thin lead crosses riveted together. The insides were covered with wax to protect the inscriptions between the 2 pieces. The purpose of the crosses was to act as a written record of important events. From the inscriptions, apparently in the area of West Texas, New Mexico, Colorado, Arizona, and Nevada, a large settlement of Adamic man, an empire of city-states, was present about 700 A.D. From one inscription it reads, "From the egg, beginning, A.D. 700 to A.D. 900, nothing but the cross." While the war was raging, Israel died. Pray for the soul of Israel. May the earth lie light on thee. He adds glory to ancestral glory. Israel, defender of the faith. Israel reigns 67 years. Israel was the king of the empire. He conquered the Toltecs, Mexico, in 790 A.D. From another inscription, A.D. 895, an unknown land. Would that I might accomplish my task to serve the king. It is uncertain how long life will continue. There are many things which can be said while the war rages. 3,000 were killed. The leader with his principal men are captured. Nothing but peace was sought. God ordains all things. O.L. The numbers I have seen estimated are 50,000 white settlers across the southwest United States in this time frame of 700 to 900 A.D. When the Spanish conquistadors arrived in Mexico in the early 1500s, they were told of great cities of gold located in the southwest United States. They searched and found nothing. But when American settlers arrived in the southwest, they found gold and silver mines. The Indians knew not how they got there. Why were the ancient white settlers destroyed? According to God's law, Adamic man, Israel man, is commanded to separate themselves from the other people and marry only their own kind. The North American settlements did not. They are also not to worship other gods. They did so directly, Baal, and indirectly, wealth. They came for gold and silver. They made slaves out of the Indians to enhance that objective. Our lives are not supposed to center around wealth, although wealth in and of itself is not bad. We are also not supposed to subjugate the other people in the world. What happened to the Spanish settlers? Most people think that Mexicans are Spaniards. No, the Mexicans and most Central and South Americans are a mixed-race people. If you look, you can determine the pure-blood Indians versus the European mixed with Indian. Until about 1820, there were only about 300,000 Europeans that came to and settled in Mexico. At that time, the population was 60% Indian, 30% mestizo, mixed, and 10% blue bloods. They were called blue bloods, Hidalgos, because their skin was so white that the veins looked blue. The whites, blue bloods, ruled the country. By 1910, the population was 30% Indian, 65% mixed, and 5% white. In the Civil War that occurred in the next several years, the remaining white families were stalked like wild beasts and driven into the mountains and into the United States. They fled for their lives. It was a racial war. The mestizos took control of the government and have ruled since the Great Revolution. The communists played a significant role in that civil war. Today, pure-blood Indians in the Latin Americas are the lowest on the socio-economic scale. In addition, in 1492, the Queen of Spain declared for Jews to either convert to Catholic or leave Spain. Many converted. They were called conversos. But they were Catholic on the outside, Jews on the inside, still practicing the writings in the Talmud. The Talmud is what Jesus referred to, in the negative called it, the traditions of the elders, the traditions of man. The book is humanistic and has nothing to do with the Holy Bible of Christians. About half of the 300,000 Spanish immigrants to Mexico were Jews. Columbus was a Jew, red hair, blue eyes, 6 foot 2 inches. At the time of Cortez, the Mexico territory had 15 million, but after decades of intermingling with Europeans that carried European diseases of the Middle Ages, the population was down to 1 million. You might call it genocide, though deadly diseases they had no immunity for. Why the secrecy and deception on ancient America history, the settling and migration by white people? In ancient times, the reason for secrecy is obvious. Assume you are a man of means, like Solomon, and you have secret gold and silver mines. Solomon was one of the richest men in the world. Where did that come from? If the world finds your secret, you will be required to split your wealth 100, perhaps 1,000 different ways. Do you tell the world? The time of David was 1060 BC. Time of Solomon was 1010 BC. Solomon had 1,000 wives and concubines. Many of them were strange wives, meaning another race. This was against God's laws on interracial marriage. I am guessing, but I bet Solomon had an American Indian as one of his wives, because surely he owned the silver and gold mines in America, and his workers got rich from them too. In our modern world, the reasons for hiding the truth, the reason for the deception, are not as easy to understand. Today, racially speaking, we live in a world Marxist society. In a world socialist Marxist society, all people must be much the same, or the system is like a dike with holes. A world Marxist society requires equality. Is a world society possible when one group, white people, are capable of great works of architecture like building great pyramids, skyscrapers, bridges, elaborate road systems, tremendous time-saving inventions, all the electronic inventions we do not even think about who invented it all, and so on. And another group possesses the mental capacity which is substantially less, people who are, in essence, a Stone Age people, living in an advanced society. No, such a world system with a centerpiece of equality would be impossible. Only a quasi-politically correct police state, deception of the information flow, indoctrination centers like public school and colleges, workplace peer pressure, and pure despotism could hold it together. The concept of every race is equal, except Jews are God's chosen. More equal, clearly, is the world order of today. This is the reason public schools are dumbed down the lowest common denominator, why colleges are indoctrination centers, why movies and TV are indoctrination tools, and why modern Christian theology is Marxist. Jesus sees all the races the same. They are all equal in his eyes, the same, Except Jews are God's chosen, more equal, Jesus was a Jew. The least obvious reason for the secrecy is that with it, the Adamic man concept, builder, creator, bringer of civilization and God's law, as presented in this primer, becomes impossible. If all men have the same special abilities of Adamic man, then all inequality of mankind is due to racism, and it has no genetic roots. Jesus did not come only for the lost sheep of the house of Israel as the Bible tells us he did. Matthew 15:24. He came for everyone. Jesus got it wrong. God Yahweh, God Jesus, is not a racist God. He loves everyone, every race, the same. To say this to a modern white Christian, that God is a racist God, does not love everyone the same, is heresy. It is offensive to them. The descendants of Adam do have enemies. In America, we have been at peace for so long that this is a difficult concept for us. Enemies, people from within who wish us harm. There are people who hate Jesus Christ, God Yahweh, His laws and commandments, and the people who obey them. Because they hate God, they wish to destroy God's creation, specifically Adamic man. Adam man and woman stands in the way of a worldwide Marxist government, where everyone is equal except those at the top. And they are more equal and have access to all the wealth in the world, for their own pleasures, God's chosen. A concluding thought on ancient America and time. Think of time this way. I knew my great-grandfather. He was born in 1880, died when I was about 10. If I die in 2030, this time span is 150 years. 2030 minus 1880, only 13 of those back to Christ, 40 back to Adam in 6000 BC. I think there was another civilization, before this one, that was destroyed by something. Most likely it was a large meteorite, hit the surface of the earth, shifted its axis, and all the water in the oceans covered the earth for a short time. It did not rain for 40 days and nights. Most likely a huge meteorite hit us. Then the oceans moved for a short period of time. This 150-year time frame I present to you above. There will be 73 back to the Great Flood before Adam, about 11,000 years ago. But not the flood of Noah, 2300 BC. There are pictures inside of some of the Egyptian structures that show an African man, 300 years after Noah's flood. Bible experts say that Moses, he was 80 in 1446 BC, wrote the first 5 books of the Bible, isolated in the land of Midian. Bible dates are wrong. As you go down the rabbit hole, this become apparent. Look at all the genealogies. Where did this come from? Moses did a great service for Israel people, but got the dates wrong, including Noah's flood. Adam was most likely genetically linked to that civilization before the Great Flood that built all the magnificent monuments around the world. The Bible forbids interracial marriage of these people, this gene lineage to other races, outside of the Adamic lineage. Preachers do not preach the Bible facts against interracial marriage. They are Marxist. But the facts are there. I have 3 messages on this subject, interracial marriage. Click on my picture. I also have a message on what the people of the Bible looked like, taken from Bible passages and historical records of that time. As you look at the pictures below, ask yourself, who is smarter? A people that can build skyscrapers 100 stories tall, vast, efficient roadway systems, great works of architecture, steam engines, great machines, the automobiles, airplanes, electronics, writing, great irrigation projects, and the 100 other inventions by white men, Adamic man we take for granted today, or the ancient people that knew how to levitate great weights, 500-ton boulders, knew how to soften those boulders into perfectly fitting works of architecture, and knew how to move them great distances and erect great structures from those huge rocks? Today, my son is building a $5 billion hospital in DFW. He is over the mechanical engineering part. My oldest girl was a National Merit Scholar, Law Review, top 10% of the law class, partner in an international law firm, a teacher of yoga to attorneys. My youngest girl was an academic All-American athlete in college, who's who, American athletes, doctor in genetics, a shaman priestess, and a teacher of that knowledge. They are superstars in our world. But what would they be in the world that built all the great structures on Earth? Would they be superior or inferior? This ancient civilization existed, but something destroyed it. It built all the great structures in the Americas, Middle East, Russia, China. Did they interracially breed it out of existence? Did a great flood destroy it? We really do not know. We can only conclude that it existed. Since the dawn of the Internet, just 30 years ago, there has been a flood of information on early settlement of white people in the Americas, long before the Bering Strait migration, during and after that migration. Do a search on Ancient America, not Google, but one less censoring. Go to YouTube, BitChute, Rumble, and it's still lots of videos that have not been censored on these white people migrations to ancient America. Other source material you will find interesting Robert Sepier videos. There's also a ton of videos on ancient civilizations, the builders of the great monuments across the globe, in Egypt, China, Russia, Mexico, Peru, and dozens of other sites. You can spend months watching these videos, as I have, after I wrote this book, after the invent of the Internet. For a more detailed discussion of the above archaeological facts, not previously noted, read America, BC, Saga, America, Bronze Age, America, by Barry Fell. Mr. Fell was a Harvard professor and was America's leading expert epigraphist, ancient language, inscription deciphering. The books were written during the 1970s to 1980s and pertain mostly to North America. You can buy these online, used, for cheap. In Quest of the White God by Pierre Honoré, written in 1963. I think this book is most interesting. He has multitudes of reference material. He focuses mostly on Central and South America. This book is out of print, so you may have to do an interlibrary loan if your library does not have it. But all libraries might have trashed it by now. Not politically correct reading. In Plain Sight by Gloria Farley. This an excellent work by a lady who spent her entire life searching out ancient writings found throughout modern America. Her book is a collector's item now. Calalis by Cyclone Covey, published in 1975. This is an exceptional book detailing the pre-Columbus settlement of the southwestern United States by white people. 190 pages. Christians Before Columbus by Jones. Scriptures for America in Colorado sells this short booklet. Negative 6,000 Years of Seafaring by Orville Hope, written in 1983. This book does have some errors, yet it is an interesting work. In the introduction, the author-publisher states, "If I have offended anyone with my findings and opinions, I assure the reader it was purely intentional." That should be enough reason for most ISAC sons to review it.